All is a blessing. You know how we do. Greetings and salutations. Sometimes we just have to adjust. Sometimes we just have to switch lanes. Sometimes we just have to try something different. All is a blessing. And please come back home to Africa. Are waiting for you once again. Coming back to you. I'm longing for my family. Coming back to you. Out of bondage and now I am free. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da da da. Da da da. Greetings, come on in. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Divine all blessed. Alafia. Paleo. Yahuwah Waku. Jumbo. Kedu. Baboni. Alafia, welcome. Greetings. Thank you, Justice, for your response and your assistance early on in the show. Greetings. Thank you for responding. Thank you for acknowledging my humanity. All is a blessing. Come on in. Greetings, greetings. Egu mopeo, egu mopeo, egu mopeo. Ancestors, we call you. Ancestors, we call you. Ancestors, we call you. Greetings, greetings. I will be forward momentarily. All is a blessing. Greetings, greetings and salutations. Peace and blessings. Come on in. Welcome, welcome. It's my house, but all are welcome. Come on in. Come back home to Africa. Come back home. Come back home to Africa.
Come back home.
Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da da da. Da 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 da. Da da da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da da da. Da 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 da. Welcome, greetings and salutations, divine all blessed. Peace and love, joy and prosperity, elevation, relevations, and manifestation. You are now sitting live with the Divine Prince, and always in archive at your leisure and convenience on both blogtalkradio.com/the divine prince, and also at youtube.com/V like Victor OO, D like David OOTYE. You are now listening live to the Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Elagun Oloye Hoodoo Obeya Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective, understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test, and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and it is my ever living reality. It is crucial to the very foundation of my understanding, my teaching, my walk, my works along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we're challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father, Earth. And it is my personal place of power and understanding. The place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. Ay, Bobo. Ashe. I greet you humbly with great honor and humility for taking the time out of the middle of your day to be present on this Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. And I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum universally from this working temple of the house of the Divine Prince. Thai potions, Hoodoo Central, in this legendary, historic, beautiful, and most enchanted city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, the land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this Hoodoo Obeah life path and journey, passing down the great Obeah stick along with the knowledge of the life giving, healing herbs, roots, plants, rituals, spirits, and minerals. Please do continue to support me and join me here in this squared circle of gods and goddesses. You are indeed my co hosts, my superstars, those who type their questions, comments, and requests in all capital letters in the chat box so that both myself and my moderators can see them and respond to them accordingly, but also to those who call me on my blog talk radio call in, listen in, phone in, call in. It is your mic, if you will, and that number is area code 845 277 9143. 845 277 9143. You can just listen, if you will, but you can also please do press the number one on your telephone keypad, become a co host, become a superstar of the show, and please bring your question, comment, request, criticism, whatever it might be, and allow us to entertain you here in this sacred space at this time, noon hour in U.S. Central Standard Time, here on Blog Talk Radio and YouTube Live. I don't want to neglect my Blog Talk Radio chat. That chat room is also available to those who are actually on my Blog Talk Radio page. And you as well can type your questions using appropriate quotation and punctuation. And I'll more than happy to be able to see it clearly and then respond to you. Greetings, Kiona, and everyone who's present with me now in the chat. Please show all due respect to my moderators, the queen, the goddess, Kiona, my co-host, one of my superstars. And greetings, T Bridge. I appreciate you, and I'll be responding to your question and comment momentarily. Jakia Jet, welcome. Peace and blessings. Justice, thank you for your early participation and assistance in helping me to get my technical difficulties straightened out. Seven, the gentleman, welcome as always for being a regular listener and participant. Missy Akinlolu, greetings again. And of course, Iba Arisha Mojuba Arisha. Welcome, Arisha, for being present. Mr. Barack Clinton, thank you so much. It's crazy because empathically, I feel like I know exactly who you are, even by the uses of that name. But welcome to this space. Gray skies, thank you so much for being here. And of course, I appreciate all of your questions, comments, and requests. I'm going to return to the chat momentarily, T Bridge. So be patient with me. Allow me to develop sort of a platform, a spirit for the day, if you will. In all occasions, we acknowledge the ancestors and the Egun and Egungun and the shoulders for which we now have our very being, have our very existence. For those who aren't quite there yet, who aren't quite spiritually in tune to that yet, understand we're not talking about necromancy. We're not talking about the honor and worship of the corpse, but the life and the spirit and the soul of the departed loved one, the departed active one, the departed ancestor, the departed elder. For indeed, we know that people of all ages, from birth to the hundreds, go into a room, go into heaven, go into the other side, and take comfort in knowing that they are forever with us. This ain't hoodoo. This ain't spookism, if you will. This is now backed by science, which now agrees with what we've always known in ATR, and that is that ancestral memory survives in the DNA, survives in the blood. So some of your very quirks and picadillos and likes and dislikes and taste and favor are heavily influenced by ancestral forces, ancestral memory, ancestral experience, and ancestral knowledge. Indeed, our greatest skills and abilities are often being fostered by our ancestors. We also acknowledge, of course, the king of the white cloth, that which covers and governs our head. We also acknowledge and show great respect and humility to Iyami, and of course, and always to Omolu, and particularly in this season, this day, particularly on my calendar, is so important. I tend to get up extra early without an alarm clock. Many of you know I don't use alarm clocks. And I'm in prayer, I'm in song, I'm in meditation, I'm in spirit, I'm in ritual, I'm in drumming, I'm in communion with my rhythm instruments, and particularly on this day in the ritual calendar of things in this present season. Some of the greatest powers known to us in ATR and traditional African based religious systems stand up in this day. So we acknowledge our ancestors every day, but indeed we acknowledge them even more in this season. And those powers that would assist us against pestilence and disease and infirmities and calamities and things that would otherwise ravish humanity. And be reminded that we survive. We survive. I know it's not close to your most recent memory, but we survived. Not less than 100 years ago or more, we survived. And particularly in this region, and particularly in New Orleans, and particularly in this culture, particularly in this city, we survived, and we will continue to survive. So I just ask that you just be smart, be intelligent, you know, be wise, and stay home. Just stay home. Don't take the risk that we're seeing right now being displayed in St. Louis. Many of you know I'm a news junkie, and I woke up looking at St. Louis and the night parties that are going on there. People of all ages coming together, gathering at night, uh, seemingly, shopping malls, parking lots, gas stations, and before you know it, it's a big deal. There are certain cities in the country, Hollywood, for instance, where that's sort of a cultural thing that it goes back decades, but they're not doing that now, and certainly not in the environment that is the coronavirus. So I don't know what's happening in St. Louis and all of the shenanigans that are going on there. Something else that caught my attention in Africa, Prophet Shepherd Bushir on Sunday, the 19th of April, launched the Enlightened Christian Gathering online church service, and over 6 million people joined it worldwide. Now, of course, in Africa, I pay attention to Africa, African news, grassroots movements in Africa, from every angle of spirituality and religion. Because understand what happens in religion affects us in animism, affects us in ATR. So you can't just be repelled by it. You just can't be, offended by it. We also have to keep our eye on it. It's the art of war. You can't go blind to your enemy. You can't go blind to the outside forces that can otherwise affect you. So I pay attention to great movements in the church community, and particularly as it happens in Africa. So I'm noticing how they're responding to the corona, and many African churches are not having services. People are being arrested. Pastors are being arrested all over Africa for trying to create, large gatherings to allow for the spread of this virus. So this prophet Bashir has created this online church, and 6 million people join. Now you wonder why that's important. You wonder. You ask me now, why is that relevant? Why should I even care about what these church folks are doing, and particularly now, and particularly in Africa? Well, the next story is Nigeria. Christian groups tackle Ganduji over alleged forceful convergence of Christian girls. Now, this story is about Christian girls, or otherwise, I believe the ethnic group is indigenous Hausa Christian girls. Listen to just the dynamics of those words. The indigenous Hausa Christian girls are now being forced into Islam. And it took me back to the Christian crusade. It took me back to when we first began to even hear of discussions about jihad and the Taliban and Sharia law. And this is something that has been on the planet, unfortunately, for at least the last 2,000 years, we know. This enforced, religious warriorism on indigenous folks, on peasant folks, on the common people, on the villager, uh, usually backed by some governmental power. And of course, when we introduce the governmental power, then there's politics, then there's money, then there's greed, then there's ego and nepotism and all this other stuff that comes in. But I often remind people, often every day, every other day, that we don't proselytize in voodoo. If you aren't familiar with the word, or I'm not pronouncing it right, it's the idea of enforcing your religion on other people. The idea that somehow by divine right you have to now enforce your religion on other people. And of course there's a degree of judgment there. This judgment that you are somehow lacking, or in need, or a sinner, living outside of God's code. And so we now, as crusaders or Islamists, or whatever the tradition might be, have the right now to aggress you. And this, you're in the buffer zone. Yes, if you aren't listening now live on Blog Talk Radio, you just experienced the buffer zone. So please do call me at area code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. And I was just talking about the idea of, the notion that many of our dominant world religions have, that it is their divine right, it is a divine call, it is their divine vocation to enforce their religion upon other people. And I think this helped to make oppression and white supremacy and world dominance through colonialism and through some of the activities of Islamicists that much greater, because of this overwhelming human need for connection to spirit, connection to the divine, connection to something greater. But then this man manipulation of religion and the tool of religion and how that's used to dominate the world. And if it's just religion, of course, that's just one layer of that onion. But then again, when you add that politics and the money and the trade and all the other things that come into play, it's on Blog Talk Radio, but my YouTube audience can't hear a thing right now. Okay, welcome back from your buffer zone. Greetings and salutations. I've gone to the phone lines at area code 845 277 9143. I have a fellow New Orleans zip area code on the line, area code 504. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
My name is Latanya Williams. I live in River Ridge,
Greetings.
Louisiana.
Greetings, beloved. Thank you so much for calling in and participating. What's your question or comment today?
hmm I don't have a question. I'm just, I always watch you. I haven't been watching you very often. So I'm just here listening. Now, I will prepare some questions another time so that I would have some questions that, that would be good to ask. So I want to do a little research first so I can get, the correct answers that I'm looking for.
Well, I appreciate your calling in. You're welcome to stay with us on the line. Once I open someone's mic, their mic remains open for the duration of the show. I just ask that you mute yourself on your end so that we don't get any of your background noise while you might be moving about. And then, if you indeed have some questions, some comments that you want to share with us today, then just unmute your mic and then politely I'll just bring you back into the conversation. Keon, I'm having just a little bit of a challenge right now with getting this chat together. So I hope I'm not missing any questions, comments, or requests. It's just not doing right. So I'm going to refresh the page. But I'm going to continue. As long as there's no buffering going on, I'm going to continue. Thank you, Justice. I appreciate you. I do. I appreciate you and all my supporters and listeners and participants who ride out the buffer zone. We've adjusted to the buffer zone as weather, and often we have found in our experience. My experience goes back to Yahoo 360. That when you start sharing certain information, certain details, certain history, uh, you're going to experience some degree of technical glitches and difficulties and buffering. Uh, that might be a conspiracy theory, but we believe it to be true. So we can't really point at a time when indigenous people really sought to enforce their beliefs, enforce their religious system, enforce their way of life onto other people because it was their way of life. It was as natural to them as how we get up in the morning and prepare coffee. It was as natural to them as how we get up in the morning and do our morning ritual. So that the need, the desire for world dominance by way of religion goes hand in hand with politics, with government, and unfortunately, in many cases, racism, white supremacy, greed, prejudice, and politics. On the shadier level, not so overt level, that shows up as bias. And with this stay-at-home order, I'm seeing it show up as social media through us, in us, and around us. I always say that before you wag your finger at the white man or the white supremacist or the racist, make sure that ain't no white supremacy in you. Make sure ain't no racism in you. Make sure that that toxin, that disease, is not coexistent in you. So clean up self first when we go at these things. But I noticed here lately, particularly in social media, people are getting bored, people are getting restless, people are getting and people are drinking a little bit. I heard drinking is up maybe 10 or 15% right now with this stay at home thing. And drinking and typing is never a good idea. Drinking and chatting, publicly online is never a good idea. And so we're now seeing people's feelings, people's prejudices. People are now getting into the election of a thing, the Trumpisms of a thing, and the liberalisms and the republicanisms of a thing. And it's getting quite personal. And in that attack, we're seeing the prejudice, we're seeing the racism, we see people saying things just like the aggressive driver. They have this sort of sense of autonomy in their car. It's almost like they think they can't be seen, heard, or viewed. Once they're locked into the safety zone of their tinted windows and their locked car doors, and underestimate how their behavior and their aggression is projected out at an accelerated rate behind the wheel of a car. And so we see that same thing in social media. We see that same thing online. I'm the person who likes to watch those conversations. I like to tune in to the news broadcast in Facebook, but then watch the chat and watch who's talking and what's being said. And quietly, before people even realize I'm in the room, occasions that the average American is even aware of. We might even say it's the mom and pop, average Joe locations around the country, and so they're now using this opportunity to quote unquote share their voice. Thank you, Keona. I'm going to acknowledge the chat room questions momentarily, but they're doing it behind this sort of false sense of protection and anonymity behind their computer. I mean, so it's aggressive and it's prejudicial and it's crazy in some cases. You all have heard me talk about Nextdoor. That's one of my most recent sites that I love to hate. Is Nextdoor. Keona, thank you so much. T Bridge asked several questions at the top of the show. My apologies. I did say emphatically that I would come back and address your questions first. So T Bridge said, some time ago I started meditation. After time, I had a feeling of at ease and could feel the difference of my vessel, your body. I'm assuming that's a biblical term, and consciousness of soul, some would call it. Do you believe it's safe to stay at vibrate state all the time? Um, I hear what you're saying. I believe that I hear what you're not saying on another level. What can't always be put into words. I'm tapping into my own experience about transcendental meditation because you're describing transcendental meditation, which is something that I've suggested here on the show previously, that people study transcendental meditation. Not all these prolific retailers of transcendental meditation, but the original book from the 60s, 70s, whenever it was originally written, just the basic context of what transcendental meditation is. And some of us have wandered into transcendental meditation without the book, without this awareness, without this knowledge, either because your third eye is open and you have a greater sense of accessibility to trance states, or because you know just are curious and creative. And give me a moment, please. Blog Talk Radio. All is a blessing. We experienced the buffer zone, so but I'm still here. Mentally, I know where we are. So you could be wandering into transcendental meditative states. And I strongly suggest I'm not quite familiar with your name, so if you've been here before, please forgive me. But I strongly suggest that you journal, as I do everyone, particularly what you see, what you fear, what you feel, what you comprehend when you experience these transcendental states. I don't want to inject words that aren't here, but when we say safe, I equate that with some degree of fear or apprehension or even caution, wise caution about uh, transcending into spaces that maybe we aren't always, ready for. And I've said in past shows that sometimes people's inability to quiet their mind and still their mind is about fear, is about some sense of unspoken fear of losing themselves, transcending beyond a certain place when they're in transcendental meditative states. I offer that it is indeed one of the safest spaces in which we can explore spirit, imagination, because there's a thin line between creativity and imagination, and going into spirit state and trance state. So document it, document what's happening, and look for the reasoning in your documentation. Look for the what makes sense about what's happening in your documentation, and particularly over time. Now, another way of looking at your question, do I believe it's safe to stay? Now, you say at a vibrate state, but we're always at a vibratory state. We're always vibrating, just at various levels. And sometimes it's low frequency, sometimes it's high frequency. Much like a radio station, except, we don't stay on the same station all the time. Much like we don't stay emotionally at the same place all the time, or energetically at the same time place at the same time. Our energy levels are not at the same place at the same time, depending on our amount of sleep, our diet, what we're drinking, what we're eating, how we're living, what we're thinking. I don't necessarily trust people who appear to be always the same thing all the time. Um, then I have to be concerned that we're masking something, that we're covering something. Um, I've learned to live a little bit more organically. If I indeed have a problem, an issue, a block, complication, I'm much quicker to bring it to the surface. I'm much quicker to confront it. I'm much quicker to say it out loud. I'd rather bring it out into the real world and address it and confront it, and have an opportunity, quite possibly, to attack it before it becomes a problem. So we're always vibrating at some state, at some level, T Bridge. The goal is to vibrate higher, is to grow higher, it's to expand, upward and outwardly, not just outwardly, on the ground, on the carnal plane, but also upwardly at the higher octaves, at our more spiritual octaves, indeed within our higher nature. Let's see. Help me out, Kiona. Did I have other questions? The difference. How can one tell the difference between an SU truck and a gin involvement? Oh, an SU trick and a gin involvement. Is there a difference? And she's asking, and with an untrained eye, is there a difference? I often say that the trick in Eshu is an illusion. The trick in Ilegwa is an illusion. The trick within Papa Legba is an illusion, and it's rooted in ego. Remember now, we're talking about powers, Orisha, Loa, deities that we claim to govern the crossroads. Um, what's at the center of the crossroads? What's at the center of the universe? What's at the center of reality at any given point? You. You are. So when the trick that we associate with Eshu comes in, it's about ego. It's about self-esteem. It's about how we view ourself in the moment. Um, One of Eshu's most common names in the New World is Eshu Aloroye Agolegwa. And so we're talking about Alegwa who spins, who turns, who whirls. And so, in an instant, in that whirling motion, the only thing that whirls and changes and shifts in that moment is ego. It's how we view ourselves within any given scenario. So the trick, Kiona, that's associated with Eshu is ego. That's the law of mirrors, as I teach it in my process. A jinn often has much more nefarious energy attached to it. A jinn can attach itself by no fault of your own. A jinn can attach itself to you through projection from a person. A jinn can be associated with a place or a thing, or an object. We talked yesterday about enchanted objects or objects, particularly archaeological objects and historic objects, antiquities, cultural objects from various indigenous communities around the world that have a jinn attached to it. Now, a jinn and a demon are not exactly the same thing. A jinn has a greater degree of earth elemental energy associated with it. So we're talking about your wood, your earth, your water, your fire, and then of course the mind or the ethers or the elements, which is why when we think about a TV show like Genie, for instance, which is complete imagination, but borrowed from um, Persian air-based cultural traditions. And we see their ability to move in and out of time, to move in and out of space. And so that's ether, uh, that's air, that's the thumb on the hand, if you will. But the other elements we also see in other cultures and other traditions. We know from the Europe region in the Eurocentric cultures we have elves and gnomes and fairies. Well, these same things show up in Africa, and show up in other cultures. A topic that I like to talk about a lot, and I tend to talk about it typically once or twice a year, is the idea of vampires and vampiric spirits that come from and emerge in African culture and tradition. Thank you, beloved, for your offering and your donations. We always encourage people to support us by way of PayPal because I don't quite entirely trust the YouTube donation button yet. I haven't seen how that works, but we appreciate you. And we appreciate the donations that are made here that do allow us an opportunity to see um, what's really happening with those with those YouTube live super chat donations. So far, I have not seen them show up in my PayPal account unless they're, you know, I don't know. I'm just not seeing it. We appreciate the opportunity to experiment with that system. So it's not necessarily for you to withdraw your donation, but in order to get access to my direct PayPal link. But we certainly appreciate the, the tokens and the offerings and the donations. We certainly do. We appreciate you sitting through the buffer zone and welcome back from the buffer zone. Check back on my Blog Talk Radio in archive to hear what you may have missed that might have been said. I welcome you to call in at 845 277 9143. 845-277-9143. When you're ready with your question, comment, or request, do press the number 1. On your telephone keypad, this will give me the opportunity to open your mic and bring you back into the conversation. Now, my first caller from River Ridge, you dropped on me, so I hope all is well in my technology. 323 809, I believe that's Kiona, beloved. Your mic is now open. Welcome to the
Greetings.
conversation. Welcome, greetings.
Ooh.
Beloved,
Today is a blessing. Today is a blessing.
yes, yes, all is a blessing.
I was thinking, and it may be a little simple-minded, but I had confused myself, and so I wanted to get clarification because maybe I heard it wrong yesterday on the show. But I heard that because I believe it's a difference in what a person says and what someone hears. Our ancestors are the ones walk that doing everything. And the reason why we're here, like what we or while we were making requests unto the spirits
That
and
was a
deities.
that was a great question, and I don't know if it was in your misunderstanding or something I said, or maybe the course of more than one conversation. But I want to respond to something else that you implied. Now, what I said was my ancestors, my godparents, and particularly Mama Yeye, may she rest in her room, would commonly say, "Baby, you can buy on your ancestors." Particularly when you're new to this, particularly when you are uninitiated, particularly when you don't even know who your ancestors are, ethnically, culturally, specifically, you're getting by on your ancestors. And so they are your first line of defense. They have had a human incarnation. They have lived a human life. They know the trials and tribulations and blessings and uptakes and downflows of earthly existence. So often they are your first line of defense. They're pushing you into that job. They're making sure that your kids, get what they need. They're making sure that you make your housing, or your energy bill or whatever else might be happening in your life. Um, but we as humans, operating in that five-pointed star, which could also be inverted or upside down, many of you are familiar. So when it's upright, we say nature. We say earth, wind, fire, air, mind, or ether. We say nature. But when it's upside down, the imagery of the goat head and Satanism and the devil and ego and flesh and carnality come into play. And, many of us don't see ourselves as the devil or operating within the confines of the devil or giving the devil pleasure, particularly those of us who are removed from the realm of Christianity and Islam and don't hear that abrasive sort of language every day. But many of you are quietly, silently entertaining demons, jinn, and the devils that exist interdimensionally with us every day. So yes, your ancestors are going to pull you out. Your ancestors are going to be there when your back is against the wall. Your ancestors are going to be there when you're in a corner. Your ancestors are going to be there to address what's real, what's pertinent. But some of y'all ain't asking for what's real. Some of y'all ain't asking for what's pertinent. Listen, you can't get your check and spend it all at the casino and then go before your ancestors and beg and plead for the blessing and think your ancestors are now responded. In fact, your ancestors and people who've got a reading for me know will push your ass down to the curb. They'll bop your head, and make sure you get a clue because they love you. They care about you. Now, the idea that you getting what you want, those are jinn, boo-boo, not the ancestors. Those are the jinn and the demons that helped you to hit the number, that helped you to find that $20 bill on the ground, that helped you to, get your man back, your man, who's married to another woman, you know, with another family, your man back, those kind of requests are carnal, are fleshly, are not righteous. And those sort of requests have made their way into hoodoo, conjure, root work. That's why some of y'all like those terminology, because hoodoo, root work, conjure sound less like religion to you, sound less like a ethnic cultural protocol that I might have to be conscious of. That's why some of y'all like witchcraft. You like witch, because witch says, "Oh, I can do what I want." But no, no, no. Even witches have systems. Even witches have origins. Even witches have ethnic cultural basis and tradition that have to be acknowledged. That have to be um, held up, or you will indeed fall down and bump your head severely. So that was the only distinction about your question that I wanted to add. I didn't say it's the ancestors that's helping you hit the number and helping you, get your married man back, or your man who already got 18 kids, but he yours. Um, now I'm being personal. Some of y'all ain't never seen this before, because I don't bring this to a reading. I don't bring judgment to the reading. I don't bring my own sense of morality and values to a reading. No legitimate reader does. No legitimate reader does. What the divination tools are saying, without the filters of my own stuff. So often you end up floating in the air back here. It's almost like it's a card game going on the other side of this wall in the kitchen. And so I can hear myself making judgments, but it's low tune. It's muffled. Um, um, I want to quick say, beloved, my first caller, you are still with us. I saw you hang up and come back, and your hand is raised. So when you press the number one, your hand is raised. So that always makes me to assume that you have a question or a comment, River Ridge. So, beloved, if you had something to say, just jump right on back in. If not, you're welcome to just
Okay.
mute yourself and press the number one and lower your hand, so that I won't keep thinking that I'm ignoring you.
Okay.
I welcome you. Thank you.
No, I was listening.
Thank you kindly.
I didn't want to cut in.
No, if you have a question or a comment, please cut in. We
Yes, I have. Well, yes, I do. I have a question. Um, I meditate quite a bit, and I think it's okay. I'm listening to you on the phone and watching you. Okay, so I was wondering. Okay, is there's not a certain amount of time that I should meditate? I should meditate as often as I have time as I would like. And do you? Um, well, I started a new diet, and I was asking that too. That's another question. But I've changed my diet. I'm eating a lot more fruits and vegetables and trying to cut out meat.
okay.
And I was just wondering, yeah, I was want to ask that too. That's part of meditation also, right?
Okay,
And drinking plenty of water.
beloved, turn down the volume on your YouTube. Okay, because
Okay.
you're
Oh, I have it all the
oh,
way
okay,
down.
okay.
It must be my phone.
Because I
Hold
heard
on.
you say I wanted to ask, and
Is
then
that better?
I heard you say I wanted to ask, but then you went on to talk
Oh,
about
okay? You
something
didn't
else.
hear me. Can you hear me now? Am I
Beloved, I've
coming in
heard you.
good now?
I've heard you the whole time. I, that's why I asked you to
Oh,
turn down.
okay.
That's why I asked you to turn down your YouTube, because you're obviously hearing
Yes,
me.
I had.
You're obviously hearing me at a delay, and so you're repeating things that we've
Oh,
already heard. And you started asking a
well, I'm
question.
not looking at my phone. I have it down. Yeah, that's why I don't know why it's doing that because I'm not looking or I don't have my YouTube up anymore. It's down because I was listening to you on my phone.
Okay, what was your original question before you started talking about your
Okay,
diet?
I was asking about meditation.
Okay, stop.
Um,
Stop. Okay, meditation.
yeah,
Your question, I believe, had to do with timing, and that's a great question. Not just for you, but
yeah,
for
okay,
people who might be looking and listening right now.
yes,
You,
yes,
we're trying to meditate and try until we're trying to be quiet. So you want to first take at least that amount of time, and you really don't want to attempt meditation when you're tired, when you're sleepy, because you shouldn't be falling asleep in your meditation. So if you're meditating long enough to fall asleep, you're also meditating too long. You just want to take enough time as required for you to be still and to focus. Now, people who've been practicing meditation for longer periods of time have a greater degree of mobility in transcendental meditation, for example, can go into a trance, can go into a meditative state quickly in an almost environment, whether it's quiet or not, whether they soft music going on or not. But once you achieve that, typically you don't want to spend time in meditation longer than 20 or 30 minutes. Now, it might feel like longer than that, and you might set an alarm or a time or set your meditation at a particular time of day when you are sure not to fall asleep, but also not to over indulge, for lack of better words, in your meditation. But you want to be in the meditative state about 20 minutes a day. And if you find it hard to meditate, that is exactly the amount of time you want to give it. Stop, breathe, go at it again, and then try it at another day or at another time. Now, people who are a bit more advanced in the meditative process, then indeed they might meditate more than once a day. They might meditate twice a day, 5 times a day. A great part of the Islamic prayer cycle that I don't think is talked about a whole lot is the meditative elements to it. And that might be why they don't talk about it, because it sounds occult or spiritual and not quote unquote religious. But the idea of putting your forehead on the ground, kneeling and prostrating, there's a ritual there that takes place. There's an algorithm that takes place. People who rock, sometimes you see children rock. Me and both Wapani did this as a child. We would rock back and forth, to create a meditative state, to create a sense of calm and peace, to sort of realign your inner body clock. Some of us need that background music to do that. Shaking leg syndrome. All of a sudden, that came up as some kind of disease, some kind of condition requiring medication, on TV somewhere in the 80s. Prior to that, no one had ever heard of that before. But that's something that I've been doing all my life. I can't sleep without rocking. I can't sleep without my leg like a metronome in music, keeping a beat, keeping a rhythm, unless I'm listening to music. And then I tend to go with the rhythm of the music. Growing up into my teens, it wasn't allowed in my house, but I had a small radio hidden away. And I got, good at hiding it between the mattresses, in my bed, so I could hear it, but it wouldn't emit sound, throughout the house. And I could hear my music. And of course, I was listening to jazz and R&B and soul and stuff that, sanctified evangelical church folk weren't allowed to listen to. So I got really acquainted with the meditative process very young, beloved in River Ridge. I muted you for a minute because I was getting that reverberation, that repeated background noise. But I can hear you now clearly. So if you want to say something, go right ahead.
The car was dropped. I just got back on just a few minutes ago, but
Oh, okay.
I was still listening. Yes, I'm glad to hear the information that I'm hearing from you because I've often wondered, and I really haven't just had many people to speak to because I was raised in a Baptist church, so majority of my family my family are Baptist, so I never really had anybody to really ask, about meditation. So
Yes, I
the
understand.
information,
Yes,
yes,
I understand. I do. I do. You and I have, I was Baptist before we became evangelical Christian. So I get it. I do. And there's a lot of propaganda out there in the so-called church community around meditation. I've heard
yes,
from the most mildest complaints about it to the most extreme, just
yes,
fanatical, phenomenal fears from church folks around meditation, what they think meditation
exactly.
is, and what they believe meditation could open a person up to. And I believe a
Yes,
great deal of that fear is, in fact, what a person can see and or experience. Because when you're in your meditative
exactly.
state, there is no filters really other than your own, other than the own
Mm-hmm.
guardians that stand at your own mind. And so there isn't,
That's
some
right.
great authority there to sort of block and stop what you see. And I think it's one of the
Yes,
easiest and greatest way to experience God for religious folk is
mm-hmm.
through meditation. And so that's why some of these religious leaders don't want you to do it. Because
Yes,
they
my
want that
mother says that it's not good
they
to do
want
that.
that
My mother actually says it's not a part of God. It's not. It's a bad part. I'm like, Mom, that's not true.
I can give you a
It's not true.
Bible
It's not bad to meditate.
I can give you a Bible example of meditation right now. Right now. 40 days and 40 nights, Christ went into the wilderness. The wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
Or up on the mountain, wherever he went and stayed out, and the devil tempted him. You know the
Mm-hmm.
story. And the devil came and tempted him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what are you doing in the wilderness for 40 days? For
Yes,
if
that's
you
what I
if you're
told my
not
mother. Like, Mom, what
if you're
was he
not in
doing?
meditation,
Okay.
if you're not listening to God. See, that's the thing. We've been taught
Mm-hmm.
prayer through a very carnal scope. So most people when they go into prayer, they think it's about asking for something, begging for something,
Mm-hmm.
demanding for something. Then there's another level, evangelical Christians and some Baptist folks too, where prayer is about praise. And so we're giving praise to God, and we're praising the
Yes.
Holy Spirit and we're praising Jesus. But at what point do we listen? At what point do we sit still and be quiet and just listen? Another way
Mm-hmm.
of defining meditation is listening. Is listening.
Yes.
But what your religious leaders, not your mom, because I don't want to make this personal. This
Mm-hmm.
ain't about your mom or my mom or anyone who believes
Mm-hmm.
the way your mom does. Um, but
Yes.
listening also requires seeing when you're dealing with God.
Mm-hmm.
When Moses and Daniel and other examples of people who listened to God, there's an example of vision. There's an example of seeing something. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, one of my favorite stories. One of my most recent Instagram, Facebook posts is me, at the cemetery, standing in a world-renowned spiritual symbolic positioning, and I now have flames and fire, coming up out of the ground around me. And some people ask me, what's the symbolic, religious, spiritual association? And I took them right back to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so they had to hear God, right? You in the fire, you're praying to God, you're asking for it. But the scripture goes on to say that they saw, that they saw, that at some point that it went from 3 in the fire, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to 4.
Mm-hmm.
So A part of hearing and responding to God is to see. The third eye has to see. Hold on for me, beloved. Give me a moment to acknowledge area code 860. 860, your mic is now open. Welcome to the show. Who's calling and where are you calling from? I'm unfamiliar with your zip code.
How you doing, brother? I'm originally from Louisiana, New Orleans. This is actually T Bridge. How you doing? I'm actually in Connecticut right now.
All is a blessing. Okay, so that's a Connecticut area code.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. I'm unfamiliar. Once upon a time, when I was a telephone operator, I can remember every zip code in the country. But now there are just so many new ones, even new 800 numbers. My number is a new 800 number, 845, and it just seemed unfamiliar to me. I appreciate your call. And what's your question or comment?
Actually, my question was on the book for meditation. I actually do
artwork. It's also implied in Egun artwork from the Yoruba in Nigeria, and that is the halo. If you already weren't there, to the point I was getting at, it's in the presentation of the halo. It also is structured in understanding what chakras really are, your chakra centers. So they're not just about being open and vibrating and spinning, at their appropriate rate, their appropriate vibratory rates individually, because your first chakra vibrates on a completely different kilowatts or hertz as your seventh chakra does. So when we're operating in our flesh or in our animal nature or in our ego or in our feelings, we're actually tuning down our vibration lower. And so now God and the spirits and the ancestors not only cannot communicate to you in a way that you can hear, but can't communicate with you a great deal at all. Your question begs another question that's real interesting, and that's the one of, well, if I acknowledge ancestors, Orisha, Loa, I have shrines in my house, can they see me when I'm in the bathroom? Can they see me when I'm masturbating? Can they see me when me and my partner or me and my husband or wife are having sex? And again, when we're operating in our animal nature, in our human nature, in our flesh, we're turning down the watts. We're tuning down the vibration. Now, there are other can see that can hear. So when we associate the incubus and the succubus, for instance, we're talking about lower vibrating spirits that are trapped to earth. They're not angels. They're not connected to higher vibratory forces. They're connected to the flesh. They're connected to carnality. They need your energy, your blood, like most vampires, to survive. So these are lower vibrating frequencies. These are lower vibrating spirits. Some would even suggest that, the idea of changing the color in the room. Some of y'all like the red bulb and the black light bulb, and, changing the optical frequencies in your bedroom or your love nest. That's actually a great idea. Again, it alters dimensional space. And so there are entities that can see through one energy and can't see or pass through another. So, no, we're not exposed butt naked to our ancestors, not necessarily where we're doing human, mundane things. Now, if we're in a sense of urgency, for instance, injury, heaven forbid, accident, maiming, murder, your ancestors would see that. Your ancestors would be present for that, because that's at a completely different vibration. And now there's that whole urgent vibration that's speeding out throughout the universe, that's attracting the attention of forces that would otherwise show empathy and sympathy to that alarm, but also spirits that might feed upon that alarm. We all know about the attorneys who chase accidents We all know about the pedestrian, with their camera, their cell phone, who's not going to help, but it's going to stop and film, the fight, film the violation, film the crime. So we know that there are lower lying spirits and jinn that feed off these moments, and are present. But I know I digressed a little, but your question, like I said, actually begged for me to sort of go into that because they're correlated
No,
topics.
no, it's perfect because it was leading to another question. You just answered it. My main concern was because this was actually about a year and a half ago before my past relationship. I got into studying religion because I got tired of fear mongering and all that, and led me to spiritual learning and frequencies and learning about energy to the point of my last relationships, which you just said. Reorganizing your room, changing, just moving everything, reorganizing, taking certain things out to change energy. It led the way you went into was perfect because it was leading into my concern and total for the whole question was if I go back to that state where I'm in calm and at ease and it's to a point where people can notice it, like literally one of my ex's best friends literally said he's so calm, like concerned. I was a little concerned that when she answered, the ancestor will be present if I need them. Like if I try to stay with the energy throughout work, throughout wherever I go, would it be dangerous for me to keep that positive energy without having too much like an at ease energy throughout the day?
Okay.
Which I was keeping for like weeks in.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. No, I mean, to some degree, you would be describing me. Everybody has a work mode. Everyone has a work personality. And the more office-like, the more building-like, hospital-like, military-like, school systems, more likely you are to have a work personality. It starts at the interview. It starts at you hiding back your hair or toning down your jewelry or shaving your beard, and being clean shaven. It starts right there at the door. Someone is giving me really strong background noise. Please be careful or mute yourself right now. Okay? It throws me off my chain of thought when I hear strong background noise. So it starts from the very door, beloved. When they say, we don't allow dreads, or when they say, you have to wear a suit and tie, or you have to wear a uniform. Everybody, I don't care how honest and organic of an individual you think you are, just like me, you have a work, quote unquote, persona. So, yeah, you carry a particular energy. I know I do. I'm super positive no matter what. It would be very hard to rock my boat when I'm in this lane, when I'm in work mode. And I often invite it. Please call in, criticize, talk your stuff, talk nonsense. You know, it's an example. I want people to see the example of all is a blessing. I want people to see the example of respect to voodoo as it manifests through me. And so in this context, people, see what's before the camera. You might think this is a performance, or I'm working from a script, or this is his podcast space. What does he do in the real world when he's up against the attack? What does he do in the real world when he's backed against the wall? And that's why I share my story. That's why I talk about being a kid on the street, trying to find my way at the youngest ages of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. That's why I share that. Caller, yes, absolutely. If I was still out there in the street, when I am in the street, I'm on set. Today, if I'm not working voodoo, if I'm not in ministry, I'm filming. I'm on set. So it might be 200 people there. It might be 500 people there. Every time we film, it's a new boss, so to speak, a new supervisory team, so to speak, because it's new directors, new producers, new PAs, new ADs, new assistants, new hair and makeup sometimes. Often the same hair and makeup might be on certain shows, certain networks, certain productions, but ultimately you're learning a whole new group of people. And even the talent might be people you're familiar with, people you've worked with before, but then you're still forced into a whole new environment every single time. And heaven forbid we're wet or in the mud or doing a period movie and we slaves in the 1700s, and we're having to exist in that environment for 17, 18, 19, 20, 22 hours without being able to leave. People's authentic personality come to the surface. And so yeah, I'm the all is a blessing guy all the time. Um, Sometimes maybe too much. People like my mother can call me out. Well, okay, you answered the phone, all is a blessing, divine peace and blessings. Where's the real note for right now? And if you're in a work environment, you might not want to expose yourself. That might not be the place to be emotional. That might not be the place to show everything about who you are. Unfortunately, some of us still don't have the same rights and liberties as others in this society, in this culture, when it comes to firing and hiring and housing and Medicare and the like. So, no, vibrate. Vibrate. I say every day, fake it until you make it. That's not my motto. That's a common 12-step motto. Fake it until you make it. Smile until you really mean it. Be happy until you really mean it. So beloved, if you already mean it in Connecticut and you're already vibrating it, then just vibrate that. Don't let people say, "Oh, well, you're too happy. That has to be fake." Well, you're too positive. That has to. No, that's not fake. It's we find other means of addressing the challenge. Because now you're forcing your energy to vibrate at that higher resonance. And so you're more creative. You are able to breathe in the moment and be creative when the challenges in that workspace arrive. So there's no such thing as vibrating or I know you reclarified the word. I can't remember exactly what you said. And your mic is still open, by the way.
Vibrate.
Yeah, to be
Vibrate.
be as
I like to listen.
yeah, be as vibrant as possible. Absolutely, we want to be vibrant. Being vibrant is the difference from me looking and being in the moment. It could be the difference between you not being present versus being present in the moment. So absolutely be vibrant. Just be sure you're being organic, that you're being authentic, that when you leave that space, that when you get home, that there is a downtime, that there is a time to decompress, that there is a time to analyze the challenges, that there is a time in the safety of your space, first in your head space, but then in your sacred space of your room or your housing or wherever you might dwell, that you are addressing, okay, there is a challenge, there is a problem. I know I have to confront my boss, my manager, my coworker at some point, so let me think now about what is the best way to do that without being moved off my square, without being forced, drug out of your vibrant space. Now there are people who want to force you out of that space. They want to see you not be vibrant. And they like the feeling that they created the opportunity for you not to be vibrant. Oh, wow, did you see me just suck all the life out of his face? Did you see me just suck the smile right, wipe the smile right off of his face? You do have those kind of jinn, those kind of demon, especially in a work environment often, that are going to, they wait for the opportunity for you not to be smiling, not to be happy. Those people watch this show every day, beloved. They watch this show every day. They don't comment. They don't click like. They don't subscribe. And they watch this show every single day. One in particular, gives the thumbs down as often as possible. And it's the random thumbs down, in the crowd. because they have to force that off switch to the radiant. And the reality is that they're waiting to see me down, and you already have seen me down. When I'm down, I'm on camera. When I'm down, I talk about it. You know, post Katrina, when we were all homeless and moving around and in and out, I broadcast live from
I have a lot of family down there. When I went to visit. I got to see it. My grandmother, my cousins.
Yeah, I broadcast live from the Salvation Army during that time. So y'all have seen me down. Y'all have seen me in the struggle. You know, when I say I need toilet paper, which I really do, I need toilet paper. I mean, the difference is people don't understand that you can be vibrant and be real. You can be vibrant and be realistic. You can be vibrant and be a warrior, be a spirit warrior. You know, there's never any reason to vibrate lower than you choose to at any given moment. There's never any reason. Even in our humanity, there's never any reason. You know, whether it's enforced or created from outside yourself or from within. I don't care what the circumstances are. I can imagine, you know, being in prison and having your dignity stripped away from you. You know, having your rights to some degree stripped away from you. Having your womanhood, your manhood stripped away from you. There's still an opportunity for you to stand up in your dignity. There's still an opportunity for you to shine and be vibrant. Even in that scenario, I would still be vibrant. I would still be me. Thank you so much, caller, for your.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome to stay on the line.
I appreciate it, brother.
You're welcome to stay with us on the line.
All right.
Just mute yourself so that we don't hear your background noise. If you then have a question or comment.
I'm after.
If you have a question or comment.
Actually.
Go ahead. If you have a question or comment at a later point, just unmute yourself and come right on back into the conversation. Otherwise, we certainly do appreciate you. I wanted to acknowledge
Thank you again.
A question from the chat. I know I'm all out of order with the questions in the chat, Kiona. So if you could help me with that, I would appreciate it. Someone asked about Simbi.
Everything is okay in the chat. It's just Hoodoo occultism had 3 questions. It's not, and I want to be clear, it's not that I'm trying to be rude because I put explanation, just a little housekeeping. People don't realize the position of the screen and the size of the screen. And when you are hosted, you're hearing from spirit, you're trying to answer the question, you're trying to be diplomatic and not really say what you feel and
I'm trying to read
and be poised.
And I'm trying to read.
So when you type in capital letters,
yeah,
it makes it easier to see.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I need my participants in the chat room to understand that. Without Kiona, the chat room would either be ignored or would be chaos. Because it would be very difficult for me to read in that small font from the chat and then maintain my script, maintain my context, manage the phones, manage both platforms, which, by the way, sometimes I don't do very well because sometimes I'm on the YouTube chat reading your questions, and then I have people sitting on the phone lines at 845-277-9143 with their hand raised waiting on me to respond. So please acknowledge and respect Kiona. She's not trying to be shady. She's not trying to, call nobody out. Her question marks, her red markings are primarily for me, but also to get the attention of those in the chat so that you can read over all the other stuff that's being said. We appreciate all the other conversation that's being said, but everything that's being said in the chat, we don't necessarily have to respond to. out loud. So it takes time for me during a live broadcast to stop and read every line as it's scrolling. If I did that, we would have long periods of silence, long periods of me saying, okay, wait a minute, let me see, let me check, let me read. You would have a lot of that. So Kiona helps to keep this professional, okay? Kiona helps to keep this organized and to keep this together. So I certainly appreciate Kiona and what she's doing to help me to maintain that. And I got a few other moderators, but they not always as present and consistent every day in the chat as Kiona is. I'm having a problem with keeping the chat in Blog Talk Radio going, but I am answering your questions and your phone calls at area code 845-277-9143. I just ask that you press the number 1 only if you have a question, comment, or request. I will open your mic and bring you into the conversation. Once your mic is opened, it'll remain open unless you hang up. And then once you hang up, like 504 did, like 861 did, and then they called back in, now your mics are closed until you raise your hand again. So I need my new listeners and my new participants, and we appreciate all the new people who are checking in with us right now. We love you and we appreciate you, and we invite you to also participate. Hoodoo Occultism, who's one of our star co-hosts who participate quite frequently, called in, even while he's a trucker on the road, making sure the drains are open and free in Beaumont, Texas. He also will type in really powerful questions and comments. And he asked a little bit back about Simbi spirit or Simbi Loa. And Simbi Loa are most known and familiar in Haitian voodoo and New Orleans or Louisiana voodoo, but they are indeed a Congolese, West African rooted tradition. We associate Simbi with many names, many paths, many traditions. We have Simbi Kikongo, we have Simbi Basimbi, Simbi Bisam Simbi, and they represent the various female, male, patriarchal, matriarchal water spirits that inhabit the realm of Simbi. Sometimes Simbi show up in Orisha, like where the river meets the ocean. You know, some of you know what I'm talking about. That was code. There are paths, there's a tradition, there's an Orisha that in English is where the river meets the ocean. And it again suggests those marshy swamp areas, first in the Congo, among the Congolese culture, but then as it carried into the New World, how it now manifests in Haiti and in these swampy regions, the bayou here in the South. They are elusive deities, much like Omolu, in that we know that both life and death exist in the swamp. We know that there is a process of decay and breaking down and the releasing of gases and the petrifying of certain types of matter that take place in the swamp. A little while back ago, I brought out my whole fossil collection for you, and I showed you petrified wood, and I showed you petrified mud, and I showed you petrified swamp gas. Yes, petrified swamp gas, locked into the putrefaction state by way of the marshy, swampy environments. And these are the environments in which we associate the various grand Simbi, Simbi Andizo, and many other Simbi paths with various names within the tradition. Quite often these paths show up in Creole culture, references to and how to utilize and access Simbi. But they're also greatly feared because of their age, because of their strength, because of the ancient nature of these deities, the patriarchal and matriarchal nature behind the Simbi forces. They are still very closely associated in Yoruba culture with the Irumole, which pre-birthed what we know as Orisha today. So they're quite powerful forces, and indeed they stand up in the gases and the fluids, and the purification and the breakdown of nature itself and organic matter. So they're greatly respected. They're not a part of the voodoo romance in any way. You don't see them greatly appropriated. Many people don't even understand them. And when they do, they understand them, or they try and approach them out of context. Um, I have a branch of Simbi in which I'm connected to. You may have seen that referenced somewhere in my video context. So I'm familiar with the power of Simbi. There is a duality, a divine twinning that also exists within the realm of Simbi, because again, your swamp is both life and death, coexistent in that shared element, in that shared natural demonstration. For my new listeners, the demonstration is the eventual output of what you know, what you believe, what you understand, what you are, if you will. So nature in itself is an outward demonstration. The tree, the rock, the root, the dirt even is an outward manifestation of some deeper science, minerals, atoms, molecules, that we don't see right away when we see nature on the surface, when we see the animal, when we see the insect. It is at that deeper level where Simbi exists. It is at that deeper level of the ocean where Olokun exists. And these forces, again, speak to the elements that transmute, that converge and mix, that can be absolutely a part of the antidote, Omalu, but are indeed the process of gases and mixture and admixture and alchemy at its most root level. And so that's who the Simbi are. And I know that was a little bit convoluted to some degree because I tried to teach without violating protocols as it relates to Simbi. But we know Simbi by water, by momentarily. Welcome to the buffer zone. Welcome to the buffering zone. Thank you so much for being with me on the phone lines, for listening in and sitting in with us. We most certainly do appreciate you. We would more love and appreciate you.
I'm a little confused, and I apologize, but I didn't hear what Tamara Bragg heard, and I wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. And if I'm off, then I'm the first to be, the first on display. So she's participating in the chat. Thank you. And she said basically the energy isn't right of the Simbi spirits. And I didn't hear that in you explaining what they are.
No, I didn't say. Yeah, I didn't say that
Mhm.
at all, and that could very well be her own opinion. I don't know how educated her opinion is about the Simbi spirits. But no, I didn't say that. I didn't suggest that in any way. Her own deduction from her own level of knowledge and or awareness. Um, Maybe she can be more specific about what she means.
She said that she said to clarify that she says no, that she said that the energy is not right with the tarot cards. Oh, I didn't see her question regarding her asking you about tarot cards. I apologize for the interruption. I thought she was commenting on what we were just talking about.
First of all, I need you to stop apologizing. You apologizing all over the place. And that's not necessary for you to moderate it. That's not necessary. I say every day, jump in, cut in. I'll be waiting for the opportunity not to talk. So please stop apologizing all over the place.
Well, you will check. You will check somebody. So I don't want to be checked. I just want to make sure I'm.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
And in
I'm
the
just
chat,
kidding.
and in the chat, it's all kind of questions coming at me from Hoodoo occultism, and so I need you to jump in and help me to bring order to this. Hello, Kiona. Now I can't hear you. Hello, hello. Kiona, I can't hear you, beloved. Now you.
I'm here.
Okay. So what was Tamara's question that was being clarified? Okay, I see her saying no, the energy
Yeah,
is
I
not.
didn't see her question come through.
She's saying no. She stated that the energy is not right with tarot cards, and I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Um, the card deck that she has asked about a tarot deck. Okay, I'm not. Your question is a little bit. I'm not understanding your question or your statement, but I do get the first part of your statement, Tamara, about tarot cards not being right, and I go into a great deal about that when I do my video, one of my most popular videos on this channel, about any dangers to divination, and those divinations include and are not limited to just tarot cards. And I go into detail about elements and how elements show up in magic, how elements show up in the world, how elements show up as tools of divination. So if you're looking at you know, what's stronger, what holds more energy, what's more active, what's more vibrant. When you get to paper, you're talking about tree mulch, organic mulch that man has pulverized and manipulated and then pressed together. That's the first thing with tarot cards. And then the second, and I might say the more important thing, is then what's embossed onto the tarot cards. And that's why, as recently as yesterday, I say if you want to study tarot, if you want to really be a real adept, qualified tarot reader, then you want to read Secret Teachings of the Ages by Manly P. Hall. And you want to read the whole book, not just the one chapter about tarot cards. The whole book talks about the origins of not just tarot cards themselves, but the whole culture around tarot cards and occult symbolism and divine numbers and numerology and astrology and how all of that then shows up in an authentic tarot card deck. Because oracle decks aren't authentic tarot card decks. I'm not saying that they're not reasonable or your tarot deck. A real tarot deck has 4 suits, 4 houses, your cups, your coins, your wand, your sword of a thing. You have to first understand the elements of a thing before you then can change it or recreate it or produce something new from it. In order to create music, you got to be able to count. You got to have rhythm. You have to know your keys, your notes, your harmonies, and then you put those together in a new way, in a new combination, in your new form, in your new version of that music, of that song, of that genre. But no one comes to an art, a science, a practice that's already well vetted, that already has a foundation underneath, and says, I'm going to create this all anew from scratch without understanding what the scratch ingredients are. What ingredients are scratch? What goes into that? The flour, the sugar, the baking powder, the pinch of salt, the milk. Well, what goes into that? So that's my whole issue with the overnight wannabe practitioner. You barely 30, but you really think you a great reader and a great provider of a service. You got 50,000 followers on Twitter, so that somehow now makes you a real witch when you have no real witch footprint, no real witch background, um, because people miss the elements of a thing, the basics of a thing, the elementary parts of a thing, and then try to rush forward and create things brand new. And that's how we get defrauded. Oh my goodness, that's how we get cheated. That's how we get manipulated. And then we say we were tricked, either by the defrauder, or by us. And we say we're tricked when we took way too many shortcuts, way too many, avoidance of the work to really get to the source. So tarot, I know I said a lot to respond to tarot. Yeah, tarot is a slippery slope, Tamara Bragg. I've had some very negative. Their fear, the religious fear, is what God reveals to you, or what spirit might reveal to you in the course of your meditation that you might be curious enough to ask about. That you might be curious enough to come out of your meditation and actually research and explore and begin to ask questions. Many people do it. Many people have done it. When I was in the Baptist church, beloved, we visited another so-called Baptist church, but there was some sanctified holiness thing going on. And people were shouting and speaking in tongues, and this sister from the Baptist church spoke in tongues. That became a controversy at the Baptist church. How do we approach that? How do we speak to that? What does the Bible say about that? It was a big to do. And even in that, I guess I don't know, 10 or 11, maybe 12 when that happened. It was amazing to me how intense and heated the discussion was, and there were no books present in the room. I mean, oh yeah, they had their old Bible in the room, and we know there are hundreds of versions of that. But there were no biblical thesauruses, no biblical encyclopedias, no language books to really make sense of what was being said. Is it tongues versus other tongues? Is it babbling versus something that's supposed to be said, and interpreted, which one of the scriptures does say that it should be interpreted. So again, we often have this generation, and I'm not talking about millennials or age, this present generation that we live in that wants to take the shortcut to things. And so tarot cards, paganism, witchcraft shows itself to them as a quick access to that without having somebody tell me what to do, without having someone instruct me of rules and regulations, without someone telling me that there's, a limit to what I do and to my demonstration. Please, I welcome your questions, your comments, your requests. I'm all over the place here, literally and figuratively. I'm looking at multiple chats and multiple streams of communication.
So Hoodoo Occultism had a question. I'm asking, what is remote viewing?
Remote viewing is a real interesting topic because it is Tamara Bragg, I'm seeing all your comments. As far as I can tell, remote viewing is a spiritual thing, but it's a spiritual thing that was taken over by the U.S. government and ultimately the Russian government. Now, let me talk about the UK, not the UK, Russia for a moment. And I know they've changed their name and their structuring over the generations. So we're talking about the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, even the 1970s, where this began to become known and then leak into popularized spiritual books about mentalism, about powers of the mind that otherwise are not being utilized or not being tapped and or considered. It was once believed that we only used 10% of our brain. Science has sort of debunked that, but what science has not proven is what that other percentage of our brain to a greater degree, what is it really doing? How is it really operating? So remote viewing otherwise is a spirit practice. And it is a practice of going into meditation, skilled transcendental meditation, and then either guided meditations or self chosen meditations with a destination to see a particular person, place, or thing. So, for instance, someone might remote view the local movie theater. I almost said some government facility, but I don't need no problems. Somebody might remote view, the park. You might remote view Africa or Asia. The things that me and my sister Wapani did as a child, before we even know what remote viewing was. The government took on to this sort of as a means of this popularization of spiritism. Um, I'm trying to think who are the leaders of that. Who's the guy, the white guy, the prophet? He could see people's bodies. He could see people's health conditions. He was very popular during this time period. I'm leaning in because I know Keona, somebody gonna type that into the chat. If it don't come to me first. But he was a mentalist, a spiritualist. He would go into deep trances, and he could read people. He could communicate with people's ancestors. He was said to go back and see Atlantis. He was said to go back and see ancient Egypt. He discovered things beneath the pyramid that later archaeologists located beneath the pyramid. Oh, wow, I still can't think of his name. It'll come to me. And so that sort of sparked this interest in mentalism, spiritualism, spiritual gifts, and the outward manifestation of that. And so we then find out through this government document that the U.S. has this whole program. Not Max Maven, no. White, pasty, I want to say the 1940s, maybe the 1930s. He was all the rage. He would do readings on people and could diagnose health conditions. He could see the tumor. He could see the cancer. And not Max Maven. And why this guy's name is not on the tip of my tongue. Oh my goodness. When I stop trying to think about him, because I can see him in my mind's eye, his name will come to me. And so behind that, the government then moves into this program of utilizing these spiritual gifts, these psychic gifts, both the US and Russia, to remote view government facilities, weaponry facilities, hidden caches of gold, hidden secret rooms in a building. And this is being facilitated by paid, well-trained, well-studied, no, that's not it. Not no, not Bob Cassidy, not no, not Theodore, no. Um, it'll come to me. So the government is paying these psychics, these mentalists, these visionaries who can see remotely to do military missions. And so they're remote viewing for weapons, remote viewing for secret rooms. Not Alexander, not John Edwards. Y'all are naming everybody except this one guy. Um, and so remote viewing, that's what remote viewing is. It is the ability to see, like someone might attempt to remote view my temple. So you might think you have some idea of where my ancestors are housed, where my kitchen might be, where my garden might be. And I'm not talking about, what you done got off Google Map. you know, I'm talking about real contextual stuff, which is why it was such a big deal and ended up in books, and of course became this big scandal of a U.S. governmental program. Um, Give me a second, y'all. Now y'all have forced me to type, and I can't type and talk at the same time. I'm gonna look this guy up for myself. Who? Okay, I'm gonna give you one clue that should help. Edgar Casey. That's it. Edgar Casey. Edgar Casey. That's it. I was just getting ready to give the one clue. He predicted the rise of Atlantis. Edgar Casey predicted that Atlantis would begin to rise and that they would begin to find documented evidence. Thank you, Maz Mutable. Thank you kindly. And he predicted that they would begin to find evidence of the rise of Atlantis underneath the sea. Now, of course, he ultimately predicted Bimini Road. And Bimini Road sits close to Florida, close to Cuba, somewhere in that region in the Bermuda Triangle. It's been disputed if it's a natural formation, if it's an actual real human created formations. Since we now have this satellite technology that can now go out into space and then come back and map underwater, underground, under sand, under earth, we're finding these compounds, these archaeological megalithic, often megalithic structural sites that have no real world explanation, have no real scientific, tangible meaning and explanation for us right now. And so Edgar Casey is the one that stands out for me. He's the most studied for me in terms of my growing, my development, my age group. I was born in 1966. Edgar Casey's name was really big, and particularly in association with Hoodoo occultism's original question about remote viewing. And so remote viewing made Voodoo real for me. Remote viewing made everything spiritual I was reading real for me. Remote viewing made crystal work and meditative work really real for me, because I could not, as a left brain, practical, reasonable, logical Virgo, I could not make sense of the government, and particularly world governments, not just the US, but Russia, also hiring teams of people to do remote viewing if it weren't real, if it didn't have some contextual basis. And just like COINTEL, the COINTEL program, which they claim, ended or just vaporized after a certain point, it is said that the remote viewing also just ended. But I have said many times on this show that sort of the ending or vaporizing of these programs coincides with new technology, satellites and computer technology. And so these programs now have evolved to a higher level. My rooster's crowing so loud I can't hear myself talk. It has evolved now into this higher technology. So some of you who are superstitious, paranoid, conspiracy theorists, you're on to something. You are on to something. There is some suspicious energy in the air that you all are in response to. You are being watched. You are being examined. We are being followed. We are being monitored. For me personally, it's to a degree of how much do I care. I'm not living a life. I'm not doing anything. I'm not, creating anything right now that I would not want leaked, that I would not want monitored, that I would not want looked at, even in my private life. Randomly you get these viral emails, messages, and they're really traps designed to get into your computer. And one of the newer ones is this porn thing. and you get this warning that somehow you've been observing porn, and while you were observing porn, they were observing you through your camera or through your equipment, and now they're going to hold your computer and your email and everything hostage under the threat that all this footage is going to be leaked and or revealed right off, because I ain't got no footage. Okay. I ain't got no footage, and then my camera, when I'm not using it, it's always off, it's always blocked. So they don't even have me doing voodoo in my house. They don't even have me doing meditation, in my house. So I know it's not real. And I keep warning y'all, ignore Facebook Messenger. Stop using Facebook Messenger unless it's your mama, your sister, your brother, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, and they're using language and conversation that you know. Otherwise, stop using Facebook Messenger. It's a death trap. They're coming for your computer, they're coming for your life. Don't stop clicking on the little cute links. Stop clicking on the little cute pictures. If I send you pictures on Facebook, you don't have to click on it, right? Unless you want to expand it, right? But if I send you a salacious picture and say, hey, the secret is behind this picture, and I don't tell you what the secret is, I'm not clicking on it, and I don't advise you to click on it either. So stop clicking on everything that comes through the messenger. Um, that's how these viruses and this craziness and whatnot is getting in, is getting through to us. I invite your questions, your comments, your requests. You still have an opportunity for those who are already on the phone lines.
90 seconds.
To raise your hand, and I'll open your mic and I'll respond to your question, comment, or request. I don't think you can call in now at area code 845-277-9143 because they have begun their countdown. And after the countdown at 2 o'clock U.S. Central Time, everything that's said on Blog Talk Radio will then go into archive. And then anyone can re-listen to it again in archive.
60 seconds.
We also support Blog Talk Radio because it's a backup to the YouTube Live. So when the buffering is happening in YouTube Live, what you're not hearing can be heard clearly in archive in Blog Talk Radio. So I appreciate you all using both means and modems. Kiona, if you will, just help me if I'm behind on my questions in the YouTube Live chat, where we will be for the remainder of the show. I can't get Blog Talk Radio chat to stay in consistently. It keeps buffering. So I'm only using the YouTube Live chat with my superstar co-host Kiona helping me to identify what I'm not
10
seeing.
seconds.
Yes, Tamara Bragg is referencing Bishop Charles Mason of the Church of God in Christ, the founder of the Church of God in Christ, being a high-level Freemason and powerful root worker. I don't know how true or how well documented the root worker portion of it is. However, I will say that I believe it to be true. I also know that many of our quote-unquote black church organizations were created by Freemasons, Masonic people, I'm guarding my words now, people who have been walked into the mysteries, if you will. And I've always, even going back to childhood, found it really odd that would not be talked about, that would not be well known, that would not be well popularized. The connection that many of these church leaders have to these other organizations. And I remember even in my own story, my father, it was hard for me to even say that without swallowing it, my fifth chakra. As we entered into sanctified evangelical apostolic Christianity, he claimed to put that down. He claimed to no longer associate with it. I don't remember him using And it's unfortunate now that we're in archive with Blog Talk Radio. I need my YouTube live stream to be consistent. Um, so welcome back from the buffer zone. 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 So even then, I found it odd that, particularly the church that I was in, Prosperity Ministry, one of the largest, quote unquote, sanctified apostolic churches in the city of Washington, D.C. at the time. Ironically, I just recently found out they eventually tore down Ninth and O Streets Northwest, Washington, D.C., and built an apartment building there. So the church still exists, but they've moved somewhere else, out into the Maryland suburbs. But that physical building is no longer there. The pastor that I was with, Bishop C.L. Long, has passed on. That whole family, much to my knowledge, has moved on. People who don't know any better might question to what degree, or people who absolutely do know better might question to what degree that um, that other knowledge, that other information is ultimately influencing the whole body of the temple. Said it. Now I'm getting it back to back to back. And that's how I know that there's a conscious hand behind the technical issues that we experience in the show. Right now, I'm having difficulty getting YouTube Live back at all. Greetings from the buffer zone. Greetings. We're on some hot topics today. We're on some controversial topics today. We're on some scrutinized topics today. Some of these topics get governmental figures to look at you. And so we're experiencing a great deal of buffering right now and consistent right now in my approach. I'm trying to keep my Blog Talk Radio audience entertained and with me, while maintaining YouTube Live at the same time. It was okay. Kiona, say something so I know Blog Talk Radio is okay. Please, as she has asked, type your questions in all capital letters in the chat so we can see and respond. I hear you, Kiona. Thank you kindly. I hear you.
Okay.
So I know my
The
Blog Talk.
Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall was the book that you recommended, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh.
And there's
Okay,
more
so
in the
I'm not
book.
typing in. I want to make sure I was correct.
Yeah, there's more in the book than just tarot. It's got numerology in it. It's got astrology in it. It has Masonic wisdom and information in it. A great deal, as I said, of what we understand today as a cult or spiritual comes out of that book. And not that book specifically, but the context of the history and information. Because it's really a history book. There's no opinion in there. There's no modern stuff in there. It's really a history book. But it's a history of sacred texts from Christian and pre-Christian era that now feed our understanding of religion, philosophy, and so astrology is in there, occultism is in there, tarot cards are in there. And again, for the person who's only trying to expand their awareness and understanding in tarot, don't read just the tarot chapter. I try not to even mention that there's a tarot chapter in there in order to sort of trick people into reading the book. Getting to the chapters that precede the tarot, and then read the tarot. But it has astrology, Asia, alchemy, Americana, ancient Near East, Basque, Baha'i, the Bible, the Book of Shadows, Buddhism, Celtic culture, DNA, Earth Mysteries, Egyptian, England, Esoteric, Evil, Freemasonry, Gothic, Gnosticism, Grimoires, Hinduism, the I Ching, Johnnyism. It's really a encyclopedia, if you will. The site that this book is on, Sacred Text. The site that it's on is sacred hyphen text with an S. TEXTS .com, Sacred Text. And that's where I access this book, The Secret Teachings of the Ages. So it's a free link. You have access to the book for free. You won't immediately see it in the what do you call it? The list, the index, the opening contents. You won't see it there. But if you type in the search or even in your browser, Secret Teachings of the Ages, it should redirect you back to this site that I'm referencing, Sacred Text. So people who are indeed interested in religion, spirituality, occultism, magic, witchcraft, ritual, from any perspective, this is my gift to you. This website, Sacred Text, and then of course this particular book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. So I would like you to read the book in its entirety. And it's a book. It's a university level book. The zodiac and its signs, the Bimini table of Isis, the oracles of the ancient world. You'll find all of that in this book. And so it really gives you not just tarot, but a real context of in which tarot was created, passed down, and how we use or in interpreting tarot now. I want to respond to the Black Mirror scrying question. The Black Mirror, you read these books, these so-called magical books, and many of you are falling for these magical books. Even my beloved Merlene, falling for these magic. Stop, please stop. Sometimes y'all ask me about stuff that's not in these books, that doesn't have a context within Voodoo, within ATR, within Obia work, within real root work in Conjure. So you read books about the Black Mirror, and they try to tell you how you can create a Black Mirror. And the reality is the Black Mirror is created from obsidian, or why, scribe. I'm in the buffer zone, so I'm talking, and I know Blog Talk Radio can hear me. Oh, but I'm getting just a dark screen on YouTube until they decide to check back in again. I've tried everything, moving the phone around, the phone's proximity to...
I'm nervous about that Black Mirror. I am nervous about that Black Mirror. And they had one, it was like $85. And I was looking at this mirror. And then I came back down the aisle and I felt that fear jump on my ankles. And when I tell you, I felt like I was about to faint.
Yeah.
I felt like I was shaky. I felt my temperature changing, like in my body, like a fever or something. I felt like I was just going from hot to cold. I had to get up out of that place. And I was like, I don't even want to.
When we think of people like Nostradamus, for instance, who was said to use a Black Mirror. But if you do your research, then you know that his Black Mirror was obsidian. So it is having a large enough piece, smooth, polished piece. This is occasion where you want polished, and then you are looking into the stone. And stone is a bit of a misnomer. Black obsidian is really glass, volcanic glass. It's produced from volcanoes. It's produced from the magma uprising in the earth and coming into the crust and then cooling really quickly and creating these sheets and large chunks of this volcanic glass. Sometimes you get rainbow obsidian, you get watermelon obsidian. You get these halos, these bullseyes in the black of the glass, and I want to say clarity, but I use the word clarity um, loosely in the buffering zone. In the buffer zone, I use the word loosely in the buffer zone. We're buffering, Kiona. There we go. I don't know what's going on, but we're buffering. So I use the word stone loosely because Apache teardrops, black obsidian is really volcanic glass. It's not a stone. So it has a completely different charge, energy, dynamic makeup than other true black stones like obsidian, for instance, or black tourmaline. So it is a trick of the mind, and I use trick scientifically in that it forces you to flip your focus, alter your focus, and then see enter and intradimensionally into other dimensional planes. It acts as a portal, if you will, a black hole for the consciousness. And scrying can be done with not just a black mirror or black obsidian. It can be done on black onyx. For instance, this is a large enough piece of black onyx without any obstructions, in its clarity to focus one's attention deeply enough to get a trance-like scenario going on. Because it's a trance-like scenario, it's an altered state of consciousness that's taking place. It's not like the magic somehow jumps out of the black obsidian onto the viewer. The viewer has to be matured spiritually and in a place to sit still and to cause focus and to allow that focus without responding to it. Because your natural animal instinct is to respond, it's to jump, it's to flinch. You see something move, to respond to it. It's a natural program to our trance work to tone down, to temper, so that your focus is stilled without disruption. You see flame and fire without altering your gaze, without altering your consciousness. Otherwise, you break the frequency, and then you can't see. And literally onto the walls, 24 hours a day, if the power itself were inherent in the stone. And the power, when working with the magic mirror, I'm speaking of both Hoodoo occultism and Kiona, is actually in the person who's utilizing the magic mirror. It's said that you can gaze water. We know you can gaze clear crystal, quartz crystal. So the black mirror is the wording is a bit overused and popularized, but really we're talking about scrying, mineral scrying, stone scrying, and the black mirror or black obsidian is a unique one unto itself because it's not mineral based particularly. It's mineral based in terms of molten, what's molten in the lava, but it's really cooled glass created from the lava. Can you disconnect from your bloodline, your ancestors, specifically her mother? No, no. You can be disconnected from, meaning you don't know your mom, you don't know your mom's family, you have no real relationship to that side of the family, or connected from because your mom and her family exist in your blood. So you cannot ever be disconnected from. And that's why those of us, speaking of myself, who have traumatic backgrounds, violent, childhoods or upbringings, your desire is to run. Your desire is to escape. Your desire is to get away from your past and your memories of the past, or your energetic connections, if you will, to the past. And that's completely different from your ancestors. I say you're talking about relatives when I'm speaking of eguns and ancestors. So your eguns and ancestors are indeed those that you know, those who recently gone on, or recently meaning they're still in the memory of you and your family, and those who can call them by name or share their picture or obituary with you. But there are also eguns on the other side and ancestors on the other side that you don't know, that you've never met, that lived before you, that preceded the people, the relatives that one might find problematic. So one can be disconnected from your ancestors, but no one can be disconnected um, from the bloodline. No one can disconnect from the bloodline. So you can experience being disconnected. You are experiencing being disconnected. I'm not sure if your question is a desire. You might desire to disconnect, but you can't disconnect. You can't move away. You can't go to another country, marry a foreign partner, and have children that speak a whole new. You are still connected to your ancestors. You're still connected to your background, your ancestry. Um, the question is, Maz Mutable, what do you do when feeling disconnected at times from spirituality? Everybody feels disconnected from spirituality at some point. It's not always the end of the road. It's not always a negative thing. It's not always a negative connotation. I'm disconnected from spirituality sometimes when I get up in the day. Now, not when I first wake up. Surprisingly, when I first wake up, I'm very spiritual. And I want to hold on to what I may have dreamt, what I may have done in my sleep, what energies might be present. I also sleep without being there, seeing them, experiencing them, being a part of that, and then carrying out the ritual associated with them. So I wake up spiritual. But then when I come down them steps and I'm just now, preparing the coffee and I'm having to go through the morning news, or I'm in the mood for my phone to be ringing, and it do be ringing, my Skype to be going off, and it do be going off. I don't be in the mood to talk to people. I don't be in the mood to talk to my mama. I don't be in the mood to talk to my sisters or my brothers first thing, in the morning. In terms of as a business person, some of you, in terms of work, are going to work or getting into your routine. You might not be peppy and steppy, right away. So I'm not quote unquote spiritual. I'm allowed some downtime to be human. I'm allowed some downtime to be in my flesh. Now, it doesn't give me the right to project that out into the world, but I have a right to sit in my feelings. I have a right to feel what I feel. You have a right to feel what you feel as a human, as a being first, and then allow that to circulate up. So we're not all spiritual all the time. And so sometimes what it takes to get me going is the fact that you got to shake it off. And so, my spiritual bath or a spiritual shower. Sometimes we don't talk a lot about the spiritual shower, but sometimes you got to take a spiritual shower. You don't have time for the full bath, the full tea, the full concoction. And you've got to do the spiritual shower and shake it off and get yourself together quickly. And then I acknowledge spirit, loa, shrines, altar. I might ring bells. I might do something now that moves you more into that realm of being spiritual. I might now consciously choose to meditate. I might now consciously choose to exercise. I might now consciously choose to move that energy around both me, my space, my house. And I'm not getting personal. I'm not trying to read you, Maz Mutable, but clean the room, clean up the house. Sometimes when you get in that space and you can't be spiritual, and then you look up and you got all this stuff sitting around you. Get your feng shui together. And that also is getting the blood going. It forces you to get up, forces you to move around, Let's right now with the stay at home order in place. Make sure you're getting appropriate vitamin D, appropriate sunlight. I'm a door popper. I like to stand in the door. I like to look. I like to be nosy. Any sound, any sound, I'm coming looking. I'm peeping. Unless, certain sounds, you know, you don't come running to the door for. But I can see you. I can still see you. So make sure you're getting light. Make sure you're getting sun. Um, Play some music. Go back in the music that you're in the buffering zone. Block Talk Radio, you already know because my speech is hesitant. We're in the buffering zone. So I appreciate you.
Good for us not to wear our crystals. Your energy is like really hot.
Okay, yeah, you're getting personal. And not in the way that you think. You're getting personal in that you are now Lekis are not going to be carried into. And this instruction should come with the Elekis. But ain't no instruction if you bought your Elekis at the store. Ain't no Elekis if you went to the bead shop and made your own. Ain't no Elekis if you bought them housed, stored up, wholesale Elekis off the rack at the corner Botanica. Those not Elekis, those are beads. Those are beads. So I had to say that. So if I'm being personal to you, forgive me. I ain't trying to step on toes. Or if you were asking a general
No, I wanted the
question.
real.
Okay, well,
No, I wanted the real. So
if I didn't make them and send them to you, if your Baba Lao didn't make them and send them to you, if you they not Alekis, they beads. That they just symbols. They just banners of. Otherwise, they would come with some rules. And you don't carry them into the cemetery. I've said that before on the show. The cemetery is a realm of the dead. The ancestors is a realm of the dead. Eguns is a realm of the dead. So you don't carry Alekis into the cemetery. Before I knew that. Ask Godmother, may she rest in her room, said that out loud to me. So it's no shame for me or you, Kiona, or for anybody listening. But y'all are deluding yourself with store-bought beads. Don't look the same either, by the way. They all don't have the same color combinations, the same color pattern, the stuff that you're getting out of these books. It don't operate like that. Everything is made individually. There is no pre-packaged beads. There is no pre-packaged voodoo doll. They're all created and made ritually and in divination. And if that's being done, then there's a set of information. There's a set of rules that come with it. So when you're doing unconsecrated things, unsacred things, you are not wearing your lekis. You don't have them on. Now, menstruation, we're talking about something that's natural. But depending on your head, I have to be careful now with my wording, depending on your head and how you received your head, you are not going to be in contact with certain elements like blood ritually anyway, depending on who's on your head and who's governing you and how that lays upon you on the table. So divination can go several ways. Buffering zone. In the buffering zone, typically try to place it. So I would wear white if I could. Cover my hair white. I would be concerned about my head during that time. Uniforms and whatnot going on. I would take some precautions. Orisha are living, and to some degree, all Orisha require blood. There ain't no vegan Orisha, by the way. Ain't no vegan Orisha. Stop playing games. Ain't no vegan Orisha. Okay, so those Elekis have had blood on them. Blood on them. So no, you wouldn't want to be wearing them. No. And I know I said a lot, but I told you, you hit some triggers, beloved, which I love you for
Well,
that.
no, I asked you, and I come to you because I want the real. Because I never
Yeah.
forget. I got tight one day. I went to this Botanica that I've respected, and they sold. Somebody said, "Oh, you got Yemayata." I went to the Botanica, and they said, "Okay, we'll sell it to you. Let's take it in the back and do something, whatever it's supposed to do." So they put it on the altar. I stayed there for a few minutes. I put it on. So then when I came in contact with someone that was birthed in Ephah, raised in it, but they were American on the East Coast, the guy said, "Oh, nice jewelry." I said, "No, this is, consecrated." He said, "Girl, bye. That is not that is not what you have. You got some jewelry." And I was mad.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's a diplomatic, better way to put it. Nice jewelry. You got. I say beads. He said jewelry. You got on some beads. You got on some beads. That haven't been consecrated, that haven't been birthed, that have no direct personal connection to you. And if we really want to get creepy and scary, you don't know who made them or where they came from. And you don't know what state their life was in the process. Listen, this is real business, real business. We got a Botanica right here in New Orleans. I'm about to go there. Many of you are familiar with F and F Spiritual Church Supplies, F and F Botanica Candle Shop. Three owners, three owners dead in 30 days. In 30 days, the original owner, who we all loved, Felix. Everybody knew Felix. Everybody loved Felix. Felix had been around in our community, in the black community. Felix was Hispanic for generations, for decades. We all loved Felix, F and F Botanica. Felix died due to some health complications. Then the next person who took over, female, closely related. Now I love F and F. I know what was in F and F. You had real stuff in F and F, and you also had that commercial stuff in F and F. You had the real hard work seasonings and ingredients in there, but you also had the quick fix, the quick repair, the hot foot. All of that was in there too. The money candle, one of my godchildren knocked on the door yesterday talking about a money candle. Money candles are made and created individually for the person that's being worked. They are not a already made candle that you might wash and clean and cleanse, as I demonstrated, before or on the show, and then make sure you anoint it with the appropriate oils. Okay, but what's in the body of the candle? And what's in the wax of the candle? And what kind of wax is it, by the way? Because many of these candles that we're buying, particularly from your 99-cent store, your dollar store, your Dollar Tree, whatever, they're not even burning 7 days. They're burning 5 days, 6 days, heaven forbid, 4 days. So we've got to stop looking at the label, the cover, whether we're talking about people, places, or things, and assuming authenticity without looking at the background, without looking at the footprint, without looking at the history. Botanica's created floor washes, bottled floor washes. Botanica's created that, with the various food coloring in it and diversity and variety in it. What did our ancestors do? What did they do 200 years ago? What did they do 300 years ago when there wasn't no botanicas? And everybody didn't have food color and were using food color to color their work with. What did we then do? What did we do at that time? We went momentarily. I'm going to be moving forward. I've had it up to here with the buffering today. But I appreciate everyone who continues to stay with me and sit with me and put up with the buffering as we move forward with another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo. New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, all is truly and indeed a blessing. Yes, we went to nature We went to the garden. We went to your neighbor's garden, grandma's garden. We went to the woods and pulled mulberries and blackberries, and herbs and roots and hibiscus. We went to nature. We went to nature. We weren't as reliant on our pharmacies as we are today, and we weren't as reliant on our botanicas as we are today. My sister Wapani, I love Sister Wapani. My sister, it's my blood sister, and she's conscious of how much medication she's taking in comparison to how much herbs, roots, plants, vegetables she's taking in. And she's learned to balance that to where she can lessen the pharmaceutical implications and involvement in her life and strengthen and develop what's natural and what we can grow and develop. Child, I just seen her most recent garden photographs. It's amazing. It's amazing. And we all have the opportunity to do so. If you have resources, transportation, access to your Lowe's, your Home Depot, get your gardens together. It's springtime. This is the time. April 20th, you're a little bit late. Get some fruit trees planted. Get some produce in the ground. Bring that roots and herbs and plants home to you, like Big Mama used to do. Big Mama kept a garden. That's why I like that movie, Baby Boy. Big Mama kept a garden, kept tomatoes and cucumbers and squash in her own yard. In her own yard. And so we need to return to that. We are going to see more opportunities. I'm not predicting the next plague, but we're going to see more opportunities where won't be no Walmart, won't be no delivery, won't be no toilet paper. Please send me toilet paper. I'm serious as a heart attack. If you have toilet paper, mail me toilet paper. I will most certainly appreciate it. Thank you kindly. But we need to get back to creating and recreating and harvesting our own fruits, our own crop, our own wealth, our own prosperity, that which bubbles up from inside us. And then we put that into our soil. We fertilize our work, with our hands. And that's where the blessing is. Oh, that's where the blessing is. Ain't nothing like pulling a kumquat off of my own tree, with knowing that they don't have no chemicals, no pesticide, no herbicides, no nothing on it. Knowing that I might have to wash a worm off of it, man, but I can wash it and bite into it, and it's the sweetest, tastiest thing you ever imagined. That you fruit, that you grow, that you bear from your hands. My sage is the best sage. My sage. I don't need no cone sage. I don't need no wrapped sage. I don't need to contribute to the destruction, to the elimination, to the endangerment of white sage plant in the wild. Y'all are killing it off. The white sage plant grows wild in the deserts of Arizona and Nevada and out west. And we're killing it off with modernization, with suburban complexes, but also with you all, consistently buying those cone sage. Just stop it. You can grow your own sage, and there's a variety of sages, not just white. I mean, pineapple sage, purple sage. I mean, sages that are sweet and tangy and tasty and useful, not just to burn and smudge and to cleanse and to purify, but to eat and to put in your meats, for those of you who still eat meat, and to add to your stews, and your brews and your gumbos. So get back with nature. Get in touch with nature. Be nature. Be peace. Be nature. Be organic. Be pure. Be fresh. Be renewed. Be well. Be whole. In this most present moment in time space. Be tranquil. Be meditative. Be helpful. Just be. All the creators are asking for us right now is to be. All the ancestors want from us right now is to be. I will be forward momentarily. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe. I will be forward. Give me a moment to get it together. What do I want to do right now?
I want to hear some Gregory suit right now.
Okay, we can do Gree Suit. That'll work for me. A dash of cayenne to the root. Don't put on my Gree suit. Boil a gumbo, hot and steady. Don't care if Freddy ready. Going break down at that old cemetery. Down on Claiborne where she's buried. Build a fire on the bayou. When the black cat scratched at you under a full moon that's blue. Chant the magic words, Kufaru. A dash of cayenne to the room. Gonna put on my Gree suit. Black top hat. Thank you. Black suit too. Black top hat. Black suit too. Same old ride that Moses threw. I'm gonna get them bones out the graveyard for you. Can't see my eyes. Black shades too. Going free at that old cemetery. Down on Claiborne where she's buried. A dash of cayenne to the root. Gonna put on my Gree suit. Yeah. Black top hat. Be well. Black suit too. Be well. Be safe. Same old ride that Moses threw. Be humble. Be grateful. Be thankful. Just can't see my eyes. Black shades too. Gonna pray at that old cemetery. Down on Claiborne where she's buried. A dash of cayenne to the root. Gonna put on my Gree suit. Roger, call me Roger. Roger, Unumbara and God.